So these are the long-awaited Powerbeats Pro 2s, the follow-up to the originals, which apparently are some of the most popular fitness earbuds ever. So these come with a ton of welcome and probably expected updates like active noise cancellation, there's transparency mode, there's better sound, better battery life, USB-C as well as wireless charging, and these are basically now the sports-focused siblings of the AirPods Pro 2s. However, these also come with something quite intriguing, especially for all us fitness and sports nuts. These also have heart rate sensors built right into the earbuds themselves, so you don't just hear the beats, these should also measure beats. Now, this video is going to be purely going over the accuracy of these sensors for stuff like running, cycling, weight training, as well as high-intensity interval training, but I'm also going to have a follow-up video going over my overall thoughts about these, especially compared to other earbuds like, let's say, the AirPods Pro 2s, as well as the Sennheiser Momentum Sports, which also have a built-in heart rate sensor. And another reason I'm going to have a follow-up is that at the moment, there's some limitations right now in terms of what apps you can use with these, as well as some important things to know about pairing these with gym equipment. And definitely stick around till later on in the video for more details on those. But getting back to these heart rate sensors though, so these are quite interesting for a few reasons. And I think the first thing is the why behind these. So I think the majority of you out there that subscribe to this channel, I guess that almost all of you out there have some sort of fitness or sports watch. So why would you need a heart rate sensor built into an earbud when your watch can already do that? But that gets us to the other interesting part about having a heart rate sensor in an earbud, the location being inside your ear. So optical heart rate sensors like these can be very accurate, but it is also highly dependent on quite a few factors, including the location, where these kinds of sensors are more accurate when there's more flesh, like let's say your arm, where the light that these optical sensors emit and receive have more blood vessels to work with. And another factor when it comes to optical heart rate sensor accuracy is movement, where these kinds of sensors need to be stable and stay put, which allows for a more consistent signal. Plus, movement could also allow for light leakage between the sensor and your skin, which can also impact accuracy. And this is specifically why they make external heart rate sensors, whether that's a chest heart rate strap or an arm heart rate strap. Heart rate sensors on watches are getting to be really good, but there's still certain types of activities that are challenging for these kinds of sensors based on the placement, like let's say weight training as well as high intensity interval training. So then, how accurate is heart rate from the ear? Well, it can be very accurate, but again, accuracy kind of depends on the situation. So with the last set of earbuds I tested with heart rate sensors, the Sennheiser Momentum Sports, well, these were great for steady state workouts when I was pretty still, like on the bike trainer, but then for everything else, it really wasn't all that accurate for me. And from all my previous testing, accuracy kind of goes from the most accurate being a chest heart rate strap to an optical arm-based heart rate sensor, then a watch, and then the ear. So the question is, how do these actually stack up? So starting out with some indoor cycling, that's actually pretty exceptional. So good that I kind of had to zoom in super close to see any real difference between the Powerbeats, the Apple Watch Ultra I was wearing, as well as the external heart rate straps. You will notice that it's a tiny bit shakier than the other sensors though, where it's not as smooth, but nothing really meaningful by any means. Those are really solid results. Now I did notice on that ride that the earbuds didn't necessarily feel super snug inside my ear, even though I went through that ear fit test inside the app. So before my next workouts, I actually did switch to one smaller size ear tip just so the buds would actually sit inside my ear a little bit more securely. So next up was weight training as well as high intensity interval training, which is kind of a watch's worst nightmare when it comes to accuracy due to all the wrist flexion and arm movement, but earbuds aren't really susceptible to that variable being inside the ear. And again, that's actually very impressive and even more accurate than the Apple Watch Ultra 2 I was wearing. So right here at the beginning were some bench presses, and you can see the Ultra 2 read a little bit high on a few of those sets. And then right here are some bicep curls, and interestingly, the arm heart rate monitor I was wearing actually had some low readings, but I've actually kind of seen that before with bicep curls and armbands. And again, that kind of makes sense based on the location of the sensor. Right here with these lateral flies, so all of them did a good job, I'd say, but you can see a tiny bit of latency from all the optical heart rate sensors versus the ECG chest strap that I was using. And then right here on the tail end of the workout, here's where I did some rowing intervals as well as some ski erg intervals. And all of them did a pretty good job for the most part, but the Ultra 2 did have a little bit of a hiccup on the first set of rows right here. But for the Powerbeats Pro 2s, I'm actually kind of impressed of how well they did for weight training as well as high intensity interval training. However, when it comes to running, that was kind of a different story here, where it got caught in a cadence lock for quite a bit of time right here. It is close to my heart rate, but it's just more coincidental that my heart rate was close to my cadence. Now, when I started on these intervals right here, all was fine actually for a while until I started to kind of go balls to the wall in these last few sets. You see that it's tracking the rise with each interval actually quite well, but then it just started to get away from itself. So ultimately, if you already have a watch, and specifically a watch with a better heart rate sensor, like let's say an Apple Watch or a Garmin with their latest generation heart rate sensor, your watch will likely get you better results, at least for stuff like running. But I found these to be great for indoor cycling as well as really good for weight training as well as high intensity interval training. And I think that's really where placement comes into play, is that for stuff like weight training, it's just kind of a hard activity for a wrist-based optical heart rate sensor to track accurately due to the placement of the sensor. But placement also could be an issue for the Powerbeats Pros though for running, where our head is kind of moving and they're getting caught in that cadence lock. So I don't necessarily think these are meant to replace your watch if you already have one. Again, maybe with the exception of weight training. I'd say that these are going to be more meant for someone who doesn't own a watch, where you want to collect heart rate for your workouts with an app like, let's say, the Nike Run Club app or the Peloton app. But that gets us to the limitations I've found so far with these. So there's only a small amount of apps that I've actually gotten these to work with right now, and there's also limitations with pairing it with gym equipment or basically anything other than your iPhone. So right now I've gotten these to work with the Nike Run Club app as well as the Peloton app on my iPhone, and I can still listen to music or podcasts with any other app like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Now I have found that it takes about 10 seconds or so for them to actually show up, but after going through all the normal setup stuff they tell you to do, it worked just great for me with those particular apps. However, at launch, Apple's own Fitness Plus app isn't actually supported, and I also couldn't get them to show up in the Strava app, the Zwift app, or the Wahoo app on my iPhone. So there seems to be something specific that has to happen on a per app basis to have these transmit heart rate to an app on an iPhone. The funniest thing though is that all apps on an Android device seem to work fine though for recording heart rate data in one and then listening to music on another. And the reason that's interesting, of course, is that these are an Apple product, but they don't necessarily work with all apps on an iPhone, at least at launch. But the other limitation I found, which is probably the bigger challenge, is that if I pair these to a piece of gym equipment or basically any other device other than my iPhone for heart rate, it'll drop the connection from my iPhone. So that basically means that I can't listen to music on these with my iPhone while also having it paired to another piece of equipment. And this is something I confirmed with Ray over at DC Rainmaker as well when we were going through the hours and hours of troubleshooting, wondering why we could not get these to work with our iPhone as well as another device at once. And we tried both the manual pairing process as well as the passive pairing process, and that's basically a no-go. So that could be a showstopper for those of you out there who want to transmit your data to, let's say, a Peloton bike and then also listen to music at the same time. And then one last kind of strange thing in regards to connections is that these do work with my Wahoo Element Ace bike computer, but these don't seem to work with my Garmin Edge bike computer. So they'll connect to either, but the connection kind of just drops from my Edge after the initial pairing. So there's definitely some pretty substantial caveats with how you can actually use these. Now, being that some apps are supported and some apps are not, at least on an iPhone, I'm sure that part's probably going to get figured out, but the limitation being paired to two devices at once is probably going to be a little bit more problematic for some. So from an accuracy standpoint, great for stuff like weight training, high intensity interval training, as well as indoor cycling, but running did pose some issues for sure. And interestingly, those were kind of the same issues I found with the Sennheiser Momentum Sports with the cadence lock issue. But again, I do want to mention to kind of play around with the sizing a bit. Even if the ear fit test kind of recommends one size, if it doesn't necessarily feel snug, switch to another size and try that out. Anyhow, that's it for now with these new Powerbeats Pro 2s, and I'm definitely going to continue my testing with these, and I'll have some follow-up videos in the future with how these compare with other earbuds. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and also go down there and hit that like button if you found the information in this video to be useful. It definitely helps this video and the channel out quite a bit, and I appreciate it. But in the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.